Naikwe, Neknamalita. This is my channel, The Midnight Librarian, and today I'll be going over my review of A House of Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. I'm gonna move over slightly so that I can, the image of the book here, mostly because I don't have a physical copy yet. So I will say that this book came out March 28th of this year, 2023, and I ended up listening to it via audiobook. It was narrated by Mary Robinette Kowal, and it took me about a day to read, in all honesty, or to listen to, and I immediately, not even halfway through, went and checked to see if my local bookstore has it. They do not, but they are ordering it for me. So I'm waiting on that. And ultimately, I finished this yesterday. I'm filming this. I don't know when this is going to go up, but I haven't done a review in a while. I tend to not do reviews unless I have something I particularly want to say about a book. And lately, that just hasn't been a thing. Not to say that I haven't loved books or I don't have some things to say, but right now, this book in particular, I have some stuff to say. So this was an odd book. This is my second T. Kingfisher book. The first one that I read was What Moves the Dead, which was an House of Usher retelling / continuation. But A House of Good Bones, we're following Sam Montgomery, who is an archaeological entomologist. Essentially, she works with dead bugs. She goes to archaeological sites or is sent archaeological photos from sites to identify bugs, dead bugs, shells of bugs. She is a bug identifier. She ends up going to South Carolina to visit her mom because an archaeological site that she was supposed to go to ends up getting halted after finding human remains. Sam had heard from her brother Brad that something wasn't quite right with their mom. He's worried about her. And Sam doesn't really think anything of it until she gets to the house and it's no longer the home that she remembers. The walls are white. The clutter that her mom was kind of known for is gone. And her mom has lost weight and is more anxious than usual, jumping at every sound, and is doing things that Sam doesn't recognize as being her mom. And there's some other odd things going on too. There's vultures watching the house, and there's no bugs in the garden. So ultimately, I'm going to try to make this as spoiler-free as possible. And ultimately, I will say that this was a weird book. But ultimately, I loved Sam as a character. Sam is a plus-size character. I know ultimately T. Kingfisher has Sam embrace the word fat. I know that that is becoming a word that folks are taking back to mean something positive rather than an insult. However, I personally have always gotten it used against me as an insult, so I still have a problem with it. I still don't feel comfortable using it. I'm still using plus size, so my apologies if that offends you. But Sam is a plus size character, and ultimately we are in her perspective the whole time, and I absolutely love it. She is an archaeological entomologist, so we get kind of fun facts about bugs in general, which I haven't always been that into bugs, but like just hearing how T. Kingfisher has made Sam excited for bugs made me excited for bugs. So Sam's a plus size character. She's into bugs, so already she's very interesting and has her own unique personality. And we get to know her. And she's unabashedly like awkward and is plus size in a way that is just kind of natural. Yes, she's plus size. No one really makes a big deal out of it. That's just who she is, which I also love. And each of the characters, I feel like all have their own personality. We get her mom, Edith, I believe, Edith Montgomery, and it's at first a little hard to distinguish who Edith is, just because she is acting a bit strangely when she's in the house versus when she's out of the house. So it's hard to figure out what exactly is going on. We kind of get some inklings upon Sam's observations, and of course being Sam and being an archaeological entomologist, being of scientific mind, she's trying to find some logical explanations when it comes to the irrationality that her mom is facing, as well as some of the odd things that are happening around around and in the house. We meet quite a fun cast of characters, Edith, her mother, being one of them, Brad. We get bits and pieces of him as well. I wouldn't say that the sibling dynamic is very strong in here at all. We get some of it, but it's ultimately not the point of the book. I recently put out a sibling dynamics video, but in this one I would say that it's like it's there and it affects how, I would say it has some effect on Sam as a character and her life, but ultimately she seems more like an only child than anything. I like vaguely remember that Brad was a part of the book at all, aside from his fiance being a part of the questionable what's happening with mom type deal. We get Phil, who's the handyman, who I actually really love his and Sam's dynamic. It's actually really funny and uncomfortable in the best way possible. And then there is also, what's her name? Gail. The witch at the end of the lane. All the characters we meet, they're all indistinguishable, which I'm realizing Taking Fisher is really good at. I really appreciate it, because then it makes it easier for me in particular to be able to distinguish them from each other. I would definitely say that the plot points of this book, it's fairly slow. We kind of get a very slow buildup of what the heck is happening within the book. And of course, like, we kind of figure it out before Sam does, because Sam is still trying to find logical explanations. But it's like some of the things, I mean, I feel like some could be considered creepy in a sense, but I feel like it's very niche in terms of, you know, I guess that at any point a swarm of anything could be creepy. It's just some of it, particularly if you've grown up with some, not to say that I grew up with swarms, a swap of swarms of anything, but like roses and ladybugs, it wasn't as creepy really to me, but there was this build up, I guess, and I was expecting more, and we ended up ultimately getting some creepy bits towards the very end of the book. It was like, I think someone had, I read a couple of reviews as well before filming this, and someone ended up saying that towards the 5th of the book we get some good creepy bits, and I would have to agree. The last 5th of the book is where we kind of get into this odd and creepiness and oddity of this book, and because of that, the dynamic changes. We no longer get Sam's humor to a degree because it's this suddenly serious situation. Ultimately, though, I would say it's not lost completely. I just think that the obvious like dynamic has changed because it's more of a horror, and Sam can't logically explain anything away. It is odd though. There was like a lot of commentary on racism, fat phobia in the medical field. There was a lot of good commentary, to the point where there was multiple times where I laughed out loud because it felt like little jabs at certain people. My one hang up with this book is that the whole reason why Sam had wanted to, or ended up having to go to visit her mom, was because the archaeological site that she was supposed to go to is held up because they end up finding a human remain. And she kind of briefly goes over how this can halt any archaeological site because it's ultimately determining what the human remain is, in terms of like who it is, who their ancestors are. Is it a murder, or is it a native, are the human remains Native American, and ultimately repatriating the remains to the proper tribe. NAGPRA. It is NAGPRA. That's my one hang up with this, is that T. King Fisher kind of talks around NAGPRA without actually mentioning NAGPRA. If you don't know what NAGPRA is, let me look up the acronym real quick. It's the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. It is a national law enacted in 1990 requiring museums and federal agencies to identify Native American human remains, funerary items, and objects of cultural significance in their collections and collaborate with tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations to repatriate them. This is a huge thing, and I know that it's complex, and I know that I'm offering T. Kingfisher some leeway in terms of not mentioning it, because I myself, in terms of like, maybe she's just doesn't feel equipped to mention it. I myself don't feel like too I'm not an expert on this. NAGPRA is a law, and with that there's complexities to it, but I feel like it should be mentioned because it's ultimately the reason why Sam has to go and visit her mom, because she doesn't know when she's going to be able to go on back to this archaeological dig, because as mentioned in the book, it can go from a couple weeks to several years, because you have different agencies trying to figure out what's going on, of who's who and where to repatriate to. And ultimately, if all goes well and everyone's being nice to each other, then yes, it can go rather quickly. But there are some people who don't play nice with each other, and it can take years. And as it says in the book, it could just be that whoever was funding the archaeological dig goes, it's suspended until further notice, we'll give you a call, good luck. As well as it's also mentioned later in the book when she's trying to figure out what's going on with her mother's house, and the man's answer and says, don't tell me it's an Indian burial ground. I'm kind of an expert on that thing. And I feel like that could have been a jab towards any horror writer, Stephen King, that uses the Indian burial ground trope as a lazy way to explain away paranormal activity for a haunted house. But I feel like it didn't go far enough. I feel like T. Kingfisher kind of stepped around these topics without actually like gripping onto them. And maybe, and like I said, maybe it's just because T. Kingfisher didn't feel like she had a whole grasp on being able to do that. Because even when Sam was talking about not being able to go, and how some archaeologists get really frustrated at this law, not even a law, just this that they have to do this, that they have to hold up digging because they have to figure out who it belongs to, who the remains belong to, and to repatriate. That wasn't even mentioned. Not even the repatriation was mentioned. It's ultimately how to respect the ancestors of whoever that was buried. And she just kind of made it sound like a general kindness of, I wouldn't want to disrespect anybody else's ancestors, which is nice. It could have been taken further, and I feel like it was a missed learning opportunity to be able to point people in the direction that it is NAGPRA. So that was my thing with it, really. Because I feel like I get that it was a general kindness, and in fact, that yes, it is a general kindness to respect other people's ancestors as well as other people's burial sites. But I feel like it could have been pushed further, and and actually it's something of a similar sort was mentioned later on when Gail kind of confronts Sam in terms of, do you not believe in ghosts, or do you just don't believe that ghosts could be haunting your mom? So, and that led to an interesting internal monologue from Sam about whether it's believing in ghosts or believing in other people's beliefs in ghosts. So I thought there was a lot of interesting commentary in here that I absolutely loved in it, and some of it I felt like with little jabs at other people and other things that I think could have been taken a little further, like NAGPRA. But otherwise, ultimately, I really did enjoy this book. If anything, just for the narration style of it, it was a little different. It was someone that I could connect with, because being a plus size character as well as being really fascinated and just that weird kid that was obsessed with bugs, of just like being passionate about something. So that's one thing I really connected with Sam. I really connected with her plight in trying to figure out what the hell was going on with her mom. I mean, like her, I feel like I and other people could be in tune with little changes in their loved ones and like how they do things, and going, what are you doing, and why are you doing this? But I also feel like there was an element of it as well where she, her grandmother is mentioned, and there were certain things that her grandmother did that people didn't agree with, or she herself didn't agree with. And there was this other understanding as well of just like, okay, think about how her grandmother grew up. So not to say that it's giving her an excuse for what she did in Sam's presence, but she has empathy for her grandmother as a kid. That's probably too much. That was probably a little spoilery, just a little bit. So, but yeah, ultimately 4.5 out of 5 stars. Yeah, 4.5. I was gonna say 4.75, but no, 4.5 sounds right. Ultimately, really enjoyed this. I had really enjoyed What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher as well, but kind of thought it was a fluke because, not that it was a fluke really, but because it felt very different than her other works. Not that I've read her other works, so I wouldn't really know, but that's what it felt like to me. That was because it was a retelling or continuation, not even a continuation, I guess it was just a retelling of The House of Usher, that it would somehow be a different writing style than her normal works. But A House with Good Bones I really did enjoy. I feel like the horror elements could have been pushed a little more. Like ultimately the first 7/8 of this book could have been pushed a little further. That last eighth was good. It just could have been blended a little more with the rest of the story. But ultimately I did enjoy it just for Sam alone, as well as her dynamics with other people, her mother, Phil, Gail. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that. If you read this book, let me know your thoughts down in the description or down in the comments down below. I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, if you made it this far, this is probably my shortest video in a while, but if you made it this far, is there a vulture emoji? I think that would be really cool. If we can, let's put a vulture emoji. If not, let's put a house. There's a house emoji, right? So yeah, otherwise be sure to give this a thumbs up if you have yet to do so. Subscribe if you want to see more of me, and I will see you in another video very soon. Chew.